Okay. Good morning, everybody. Morning. Welcome back, day 2. Not quite as hot, hopefully, anyway. Pretty hot yesterday, wasn't it? Well, thank you for joining us for another live episode of the Places Will Go marketing show. For those who are coming back from yesterday, thank you. We really love the support we're getting, lots of kind messages. Now in our 203rd episode, after 5.5 years, Richie and I. So this morning I'm delighted to welcome Murray Lamble, Chief Customer Officer at Gusto. I'll keep it brief, but to say a few words about Murray. So Murray started his career at British Airways and then spent 15 years climbing the ranks at eBay, from loyalty and retention roles all the way up to Vice President and then Global GM, basically shaping how millions of people buy and sell. Now, as of I think 7 months, did I get that right? Chief Customer Officer at Gusto, as I said, bringing a no-nonsense, data-fueled, customer-first mindset to transform how we all think about dinner. And I'm sure there's some people in the audience who are avid users. The mission, make Gusto the go-to brand for Britain's kitchens. Now, actually, Murray's quite a bright chap, so he's a strategist with an MBA and a historian by training. I like that. I've had a couple of bosses who've been historians. Big thinkers. No pressure. A leader known for combining ruthless focus with genuine care. So driving results while building teams that people actually want to belong to and be a part of. So please give a huge welcome to Murray Lamble.
Thank you. Good intro.
You made me very hungry. You talked about dinner. I'm still waiting for my breakfast, so maybe after this. Murray, let's get right into it. British Airways, eBay, now at Gusto. And you're really there to shape the full customer journey and experience at Gusto. And I wonder if you can maybe elaborate a little bit on what you think being customer first really does mean to you in 2025.
Look, it's always a lazy comment to talk about being customer first and customer friendly. And candidly, I think there is so much value in just being super deep and getting some real quality insight from talking to customers, understanding the market, and then how you put it together. And that's the unique thing that marketeers still do differently to any tech or any other discipline in the business. And that's kind of a really unique mix that you get to do within that job.
Wow. I mean, that to me sounds very holistic in nature. Can you give us a little bit of a playbook or an understanding of how you piece all of that together, or how have you been trying to do that over the last 7 months at Gusto?
I wish I could give you a pithy, smart answer and you do X and you get Y out. But the point is
What, you're not going to do that?
If we could all do that, then no, there wouldn't be a job there, right? That's not what the value is. I'll bring it to life with an example. I've worked with some brilliant marketeers who have done this excellently well. And then I think you then have to translate that into every environment you work in. When I was at eBay, I worked with an amazing guy who is now running Temu in the UK. And he ran our vehicle parts and accessories business. And he was really deep into how the industry was changing, what the business's needs were from suppliers, and what the customers' needs were in terms of buyers. Connected it together in a brilliant insight. And I'll keep it short, but what he saw was regulation was changing. We had thousands of small businesses on eBay that were basically breaker yards, junkyards.
Yeah.
They didn't know which parts to take off their car to provide to the customer. Insurance providers wanted to use used parts in repair jobs, and then garages couldn't find the parts they need. So he pulled together, well, how do I tell the breaker yards which parts to take off the car? How do I help the insurance industry use these parts in a licensed and authorized quality way? And then how do I get them to the garages? Now, connecting those bits of the supply chain together and then marketing that to the customer with the right tech overlay transform that category for eBay. Now, that for me is amazing customer insight, and that's an example of going in depth.
I love that thought. By the way, just as an anecdote, we literally were interviewing Fernando Machado a couple of weeks ago. Sorry to name drop, but nevertheless. The thought being is, when he talked about the Burger King Moldy Whopper campaign, it actually took him 4 years. So what we saw as the final momentous sort of moment took them 4 years of re-engineering the entire end-to-end supply chain in order to deliver on that. And I just thought it was just a great example then, quite parallel to all the effort that goes into what we often see as the shiny front end in the advert so much later down the line.
Flattery will get you everywhere. You're putting me on the level with somebody much bigger, but we'll work with that. So, but that nonetheless was a big transformation for those businesses in the UK.
So, Murray, subscription businesses are pretty tricky. Churn is the enemy. Subscription fatigue is a very real thing. So, what are you doing at Gusto to keep the proposition relevant and sticky, and to really stay there with today's time-starved, value-conscious consumer? Not easy.
I think I remember being at business school and being told, we had it drummed into us at business school that subscription businesses were the only way forward. So like 20 odd years ago, that was what we were told we had to do. And hence, guess what, loads of subscription businesses appeared, and that's all what we did. The way I look at it is, in this particular category of part of the grocery category, it has felt a bit like gym membership felt when I was younger. And you're all far too young in the audience, but gym membership when I was younger, you had to sign a year's contract, commit up front, you had no breakout clause. What an absolute nightmare. And the market evolved, and we just live in a more dynamic world. Our job is to create a product that people love, such that they want to use the product, and you flex in and out of it. Now, subscription is helpful from an investor perspective, because that talks about predictability of revenues and all that good stuff. Fundamentally, our job is to make sure that every week a customer makes a great choice about how they eat. And then that's about what's the menu you put in front of them, how easy is the product to get hold of, what's the quality of the ingredients you put into it. And that's the same in any business, subscription or not business. And so with us, that's what we need to be about. And so subscription's a bit of a distraction. I don't think that's what we're about. I don't think that's an interesting way to frame it, other than with investors when you want to raise the right money. I think what's important is that customers flex in and out of the product as they need to. Eating is dynamic, so meaning 70% of our customers tell us they eating differently in their household every week. So me forcing a subscription on you every week is going to be a disaster for my churn figures. And I just don't want to market in that way. That's not interesting work to do, frankly. So. Yeah,
very true. What's coming to mind now is historian, very customer focused, clearly incredibly commercial. Tell me how those things triangulate. I mean, it's not an easy question.
No, I mean, I'm glad they come together for you.
This is what I'm hearing and seeing.
So I'll try and thread it together from what you said. Let's link the historian bit. The bit about history that I loved, and this only came to fruition years after I graduated, one of my favorite books at the time, and still is, was the Sapiens Yuval Harari book. And in it is an amazing quote where he says, you don't study history to understand what will happen. You study history to know that what is going to happen is not predicated, and you can determine the outcome. And that is an amazing thing to believe in. That should be taught in school right up front, which is you then influence what the outcome can be, and that's exciting. And what motivated me to join Gusto was a bit like some of the things that motivated me at eBay over the years. Was this is a new part of the category, and people in the UK do not eat very well, and they need to eat better. And then we can change the outcome. And if along the way we make some money, that's even better, because that's what we need to be able to do. Shockingly, in the UK, 70% of our calories of adults are ultra-processed food. I was at a British Medical Association conference 2 weeks ago. The medical profession, along with the government, believes that UPF should be treated like tobacco was. And the lobbying from the food industry is to make sure that that's not the case. And so they are trying to say UPF is not a bad thing. It's terrible. And so our job is to put fresh products in front of people. Now, the build on it is, this is a very long answer to your question,
no,
so do interject.
So far, anyway, it's a banging answer to a half-assed question, so you keep going.
The build on the average the average British adult knows how to cook 2 meals. I mean, I don't know about you, but that becomes very boring and very repetitive very quickly.
That's about my repertoire, in fact.
People need to learn how to cook better. We no longer teach cooking in school. When I was at school, it was taught. It's no longer part of the curriculum. We have a poor diet that people consume, and we have a food industry which is trying to force more UPF in the system. In combination, those are bad things, and they need to change. So that goes back to the history point, which is we need to change it, and we can change it, and that's what's exciting.
I'm going to sort of do the worst thing a moderator can do and try and ask 2 questions in one. Terrible, but let me try and see if this works. So we were talking just there a couple of minutes ago about the naming convention of Gusto, how do you pronounce it? Who knows? But the thought being about sort of your brand distinct assets. And I wondered to what extent, as a marketer, you think about that, are thinking about distinctive brand assets and how you're bringing it to life at Gusto. And then part two, you talk about the food industry more generally, which talks to brand differentiation. And I wonder, are you pipping yourself against an enemy here? Or indeed, are you the white knight of some description? Tell us a little bit about distinctiveness versus differentiation in your world.
I think it's very challenging when you're working in a business and you're under a lot of commercial pressure to think about, well, how do I differentiate this brand? Because right now we have to drive the sales this week. We have lots of employees and we need to get the numbers out the door. And over my many years at eBay, I was there for so many turns and twists in terms of the strategy and how we competed. And the worst times were when we weren't clear about what we stood for, we lost the way, and it took people that I learned a great deal from, which is taking a bolder position and learning about where you stand out. And only when at eBay we found our feet and were clear about where we stood out did commercially that make us very successful as opposed to moderately successful in the later stages. Now, if you then switch it back into what appealed to me about Gusto, Gusto is, there's always an enemy, and I've talked about that. Frankly, the enemy for me is an industry that promotes bad eating, and therefore, how do you do something different about it? By the way, at the same time, you need to make sure you sell lots of product, because we employ people, we have a responsibility to the people we employ and the families that rely on us for food, which is fundamentally what we do. And so there's always a balance between I'm driving the brand differentiation versus I need to survive. And if I think about this category, after years of kind of crazy growth, it got into a phase where it was about survival. And therefore, it isn't about differentiation. It's about, can we still run, and are we still credible in the current market? And now we're at a privileged position where you're back in profitability, and then you can think about having a bolder stance and take that with where you want to go. And so finding your feet in the confidence of the team and what they do, building that confidence up, and then really manifesting that in a way that shows up in the brand is what the exciting opportunity is. We did that eBay. I learned through a lot of mistakes along the way and a lot of cock-ups. To then be able to do that now at Gusto is a privilege if that's what we get to do.
Brilliant. You mentioned team there, Murray. So let's flip conversations a bit into leadership, because you've obviously navigated through many leadership challenges. So broadly, where do you feel at your best as a leader? And then the add on that is, how do you recharge when the tank's low?
I spent a lot of time soul searching when, for different reasons, a load of stuff happening in my personal life, and I was really going through a period of, why do I bother? Like, what's the meaning of life? Like, why do I go to work every day, and what's the point? And could I be doing something more fruitful? And I was like, right, should I become a teacher because that's more important, or do I become a lawyer, or what do you do? I was kind of going through this kind of reset moment for quite a few years. And I read Clayton Christensen's book, amazing business leader, and he talks about management is a noble profession. And I was like, oh, that's kind of, that resonated with me. I mean, there's kind of a whole load of pride in that. And I was like, well, why is it a noble profession? And we live in an amazing world where we can create high-quality jobs that people have, and they can earn good money, and that makes a better life for them and their families. And so when you're doing that, how do you do that? Well, it's all about the listening and the learning and then helping and working with those teams and knowing that you are together for a very short period of time. And one of the most unpopular things I've said to every team I've worked with is, we're probably going to be together for a maximum of 24 months. So let's make the most of this moment, and how do we make it, and how do we really work very hard? And 24 months goes bloody quickly. And so that's that thing about, we're under time pressure. This is not going to be fun along the way, but then how do we do it? We support one another. And that for me is when I'm at my kind of high point, which is we're under that time focus and time pressure, and that's what I love and enjoy most. Yeah.
A build on that, there's a thread through our conversation. So finding the purpose in kind of food and nutrition in the UK, the thing you said about being a historian, that answer as well. So there's a bit of a thread, and I know that you're on the board of GS1 and Missing People, so you'll know Will Worsdale, actually, just thinking about it. But how do these very different worlds influence your thinking back in commercial reality?
Yeah. I mean, it's always kind of interesting, right? Whenever you do something and then you can always somehow tell a story retrospectively, I'm never sure, it's never as conscious as those things as they happen. GS1, I was actually at our board meeting yesterday, is an incredible organization. And at its most basic level, it basically creates barcodes so that we all know what a barcode is. That's where it started. Why do barcodes exist? So that we knew what the food was that was in the tin or in the packet that you were buying. Where that organization is now is it's at a place where it's a massive provider to the National Health Service, enables you to scan products to make sure that the right customer, the right patient, gets the right medicine with the right doctor. And there's a lot of mistakes that happen in a complicated system that means that doesn't happen always. And so through eBay, I was kind of asked to join that board, largely to do with my marketplace experience, but then you see there's a load more stuff that you can do as a result of that. Now, being at that meeting yesterday gave me a ton of stimulus because there's so many smart people that sit around that board. That massively influences what I can do back at Gusto. And fundamentally about Gusto, I really wanted to be part of an organization that's small enough to be able to have an influence. UK PLC, to use kind of NAF terms, that we do not have enough businesses of this sweet spot of size to create great employment for all of the highly qualified people we have in the UK. And I compare that to my eBay experience and my Californian colleagues, where frankly they were tripping over themselves to find great jobs that paid really well. And we need more businesses like Gusto of that size, which provide great employment for people, and therefore they need high quality people that are bringing together different insights from across their networks to make it a better organization. And then the missing people bit is I'm blown away by the caliber and the quality of what a charity does with the resources they've got, which is always humbling if I think about the resources that I'm given in my job. And equally, their willingness and openness to learn is mind-blowing for me. And so I just love this idea of how you network. In my eBay job, I used to try and spend 1, sometimes 2 days a week just out on the road talking to customers, spending time. I love that. I try and do that in this job. It's hard, but I try and do that. And that's where you bring those connections together. That's where the richness of insight comes out, and that's where you can do some cool stuff. I'm sorry if that was a bit long-winded, but...
So we've just got time for our last question here this morning, Murray. It's been a fascinating conversation. So Murray challenged me before the interview to ask him a curveball question. So I'm going totally off-piste right now. So here we go. So I think marketers are predominantly known or have this reputation, perhaps unkindly, of being in the coloring in function. And of course, I think all of us sitting here today are perhaps working hard to try and change that perception. But if you were to rank the 4 Ps in order of importance for a marketer, how would you rank the 4 Ps?
Oh my gosh. That's not too left field. The worst left field question I had was from a BBC Radio 4 journalist who literally, as I was walking in, said, I'm going to ask you about the sale of ivory on eBay. I'm like, dude, it was the most niche question to do with a policy I wasn't expecting. It was like, that was a horrible question.
So I've been kind to Murray, is what he's saying, basically. Fine.
I'm going to hedge my answer a little bit. I worked with a lady at eBay who was the genius of using price just to grow the business over many years. I mean, honestly, Claire Gilmartin, she went on to run Trainline, done incredibly well as a result of that. And I learned so much from her about how she took one particular niche and went so deep and ran the way that you run and manipulate price. And so that for me was incredible. Clearly, if you don't have a good product behind what you do, all of the other bits have to come together. I think it's all about, depending on where your business is at, what you need to do and where the opportunities lie. And some have a lot more headroom than others. And then it goes back to the commercial reality. How much are my feet at the fire in order to drive sales? What do I need to do today? What's my time horizon that I'm building towards? And what am I trying to do? So you've got so many dynamics that are at play that you have to be the ninja marketeer to work out which of the things you're going to do to kind of make work. So yeah, that's my slightly hedged answer, I'm afraid, but hopefully gives you a flavour for how I think about it.
I love the ninja comment. Yeah. There you go. Be more ninja, guys. It's been wonderful having you here today, Murray. Thank you for your time. This is going to go live in a couple of weeks on the Places Will Go marketing show, so please do tune in. We've got 202 other podcasts as well, so please listen in as well. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.